Elliot Wise, welcome to the Man of War podcast. It is an honor to have you on, and it started off with some laughing, which is great. I love that. It's the best way to start a podcast. So good stuff, man. Hey, listen, for those who don't know who you are, would you mind taking a minute and introducing yourself?
No, thank you so much, mate. It's an absolute honor and privilege to be on your podcast. You've been pioneering some great movements, especially from for men, and it's an absolute privilege to be a guest. And to be honest with you, who am I? I'm a father of two wonderful boys, husband to an amazing wife, very entrepreneurial. I've been you know, starting out in the web design space at 13, got into e-commerce at 16, millionaire from that by 19, lost it all by 21, built it back from a marketing agency, got more recently into aesthetics, real estate, and now trying to really pioneer a better message and build my personal brand and to be honest with you, try and influence people in a slightly better way because we'll talk about this I'm sure a little bit more, but the the role models that we have today in society are lacking, I would say, for the most part. And I think, especially for young men, young boys, like I have two young boys, I'm very conscious of what they're consuming and who they're following and what they're listening to. I don't think it's necessarily going in the good direction. And I think
Yeah.
men like us can get involved and repivot that. And I don't think we've failed yet, but we've got some work to do, that's for sure. And hopefully I can be a bit of a pioneer and innovator in that space.
Very good. How long have you been married?
Just over 10 years.
Wow. God
Over
bless
10.
you, man. That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
great.
my wife's incredible, mate. And I think a lot of the I just did a piece of content on that Andy Byron guy. I don't know, is he going viral over there as well?
Yeah,
That
yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
the guy that got caught. I mean, it's pretty unlucky, but caught cheating on his wife at a Coldplay concert. But I think that visceral reaction from the internet, he was just the scapegoat. He was just the guy that got
Sure.
clobbered on camera. But I think it's a visceral reaction because of the amount of issues we now have with men and women that have throwaway culture, the lack of respect and honor that we have for one another. And I think it's going down a really bad path. And I think a big part of that, and a big part of that to blame is social media. And I don't actually think people agree with it. I think it's just the minority are dominating the majority, and traditional values seem to be a lot quieter than those of the new wave of kind of misogynists and cheaters, I would say.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I mean, I think that absolutely he was a scapegoat, and it's yeah. Look, in the end, it goes like this. So many people want to throw, stone in a glass house. We know everyone out there, like they're saints, like they walk around perfect. But that's the internet for you. Talk to me a little bit about your mindset nowadays. I mean, look. You've been married for 10 years, you have kids, you're a leader in your family, you're pushing, you're doing things. I mean, you're out there creating content. You seem like you're a mission-driven guy. But I don't know if it's like that over there in the UK, in that area, where you start seeing men lose their masculinity and maybe that toughness, that grit, that tenacity. Where's your mindset today? I mean, are you still the guy that you were as far as, coming up strong and building your family, or do you see that, especially media itself and just society wants to lead you down a different road?
I'm most certainly not the same person I was. I'm now infinitely more hungry and more aggressive than I ever was. And a big part of that is I suddenly realized how precious and finite time is.
Yeah.
I think having two young boys really helped me. It blessed me actually in a way of seeing just how fast time moves because you then have this visual representation of, holy, like 5 years have passed and that's a walking little boy now. Like five
Yeah.
years ago, it wasn't even a blip on the radar.
Crazy.
Time is moving. And with that, you suddenly become very aware, I certainly did, of my mortality and how short this amazing opportunity is. And tomorrow isn't promised. And now I have people looking up to me, two young boys that are watching what I do, listening to what I say, seeing how I act, and copying every single thing that I do. And then all of a sudden, I became very, very, very conscious of who I was as a person, who I am as a man, who I am as a father, who I am as a husband. And that just put me in another gear. I don't know what happens to other men, but it gave me a fire up my ass like I've never had before. I don't know, but what about you?
Whoa, man, that is the unfortunately what you start seeing in our day and age right now is exactly that um it's tough, very, very difficult to deal with the environment wanting to pull men away from their masculine roles. Um, at home as a leader, I've been married 21 years, I have 4 kids. Um, what I can say is uh, that's the toughest. You just said something that was great. I loved it, where you start seeing all of a sudden when your kids start seeing you and start watching your every move, and you're like, holy crap, like, wait a minute, I got eyes on me. So it's like, oh man, I got eyes on me, everything that I do. And you're like, oops, oops, man, I forgot I got. So um eh, the the way that in my life, the way that I've seen, for the most part, society they want to pull you away from really leading your family, setting values and principles in your home. It's almost like they frown upon that. We have places here in the United States that cities specifically, that just want to drive men away from the home. They rather have women lead. They want to empower women to a level, and there's nothing wrong with empowered women, but there is something wrong when women want to start doing the man's job day in and day out. So that's kind of like how we're tweaked here in the United States a little bit. But I think things may be changing back now a little bit stronger. So now that's
Yeah, I
what I
think
think.
your point, the UK has gone way further than it has from what I can see in the US down that road. And we talk a lot about the immigration problems in the UK, and we talk a lot about the government that we have and how it's being run. But I trace it all the way back to the root cause, which is the family unit failed, which weakened men and women to such a degree that then everything else on top of it collapsed. So I had a big argument recently with a few people about the fact that the immigration was the problem, the government was the problem. I said, no, motherfucker, actually, excuse my French, you became weak and allowed this to happen. And this is the thing that I've noticed because I spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe as well. And it's going the wrong way there, but it's still very much, they're patriotic. They have traditional values. The men are men, the women are women. And if you come
Mhm.
into their country and you shit on their culture, you try and do something you don't like, you'll know about it pretty bloody quickly.
Yeah, yeah, you
Everyone's
will.
behaved. They have lots of immigrants there and they're working. They're getting on well. Like crime is pretty low, and I feel pretty safe walking around at night with a nice watch on and my wife on my arm. But in the UK, we lost our way, and I trace it back to the fact that they destroyed the sanctity of marriage. They, like you said, blurred gender roles, and because men became weak, the allowance and tolerance for anything that happened in the country.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what needs to happen is we need to take accountability as families, not just men, both men and women, for the way we've acted, for allowing that to drop in grandeur. And I always say this, I'm like, look, if someone attacked you, I'm sure you'd be pretty pissed off. You look like a guy that can
Right.
handle himself. But let's say they try to attack your wife and your kids, right? You're going to kill them. Like it doesn't matter. It's not even a thought or emotion. Now, if you strip that emotion away from a man and his family, even a mother would, right? If you see my wife, if
Oh
someone,
yeah,
it's like
Without a doubt.
me
Yeah.
sitting there with my leg hanging off, he'll be all right. In
Yeah.
fact, the kid should be like a wild animal.
Yeah.
Now, that then also transitions into, okay, what's happening at school? What education system's happening? What's happening with the immigrants? What's happening with your country? Who's actually in charge? You turning up to vote. So if you go right back to that root cause and you actually reinstill pride in who we are as people, our ancestors and where we came from and the family unit, you'd solve all the problems. And that's the reason, in my opinion, that they're trying to destroy masculinity is because it allows a tolerance for whatever. It creates a puppetry that's accepted.
So when do you think it started in the UK? At what point? Was it a decade ago or
It's really hard to put your finger on it, but I would definitely say over a decade ago. It's been coming on a long time. And there's
yeah.
that age-old saying where if you put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump straight back out. But if you put a frog in cold water and bring it to boil, it will stay in there and burn to death. If you change things at a slow enough rate, you don't notice quite as much. And before you know it, you've lost your way. And it's slowly, slowly chipping away. And no one said anything, and no one's actually really noticed it's happening. And the problem is these bloody devices brain rot you into seeing and hearing things subconsciously. But like I said, it's not an excuse. And we have debates like this all the time, but people don't want to hear it.
So let me ask you this. You've been married 10 years.
Mhm.
And where does your wife stand in all of this? I mean, did you at one point or another connect with her, maybe give her a framework? You discussed expectations. When it comes to relationships, what I find many times is that because men are so weak now and they're so guided down this, I don't know, this weird path of beta type, they want the woman to lead, that they go into in a relation they go into a relationship and it's kind of like, okay, whatever the woman wants, I'll bow down my head and walk behind her with my shoulders shrugged, my head down, and I'll just be that peon in the relationship where she walks all over me. We see that here in the United States. This is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the weakest relationship countries in the world. In the world. um, Weak with men and women. So, uh, you know, I, I don't know. How did you do it? I mean, was your wife? How did you guys connect? How did you build the structure that you currently have at home raising your kids?
So I've always believed in traditional marriage. And ironically, my parents actually got divorced when I was younger. I remember being very embarrassed by it and it actually really hurt me. I think
Mhm.
so much so that I always thought to myself, because I looked at my grandparents and I was very close to my grandparents and they had a wonderful marriage. And I benchmarked them as something I wanted from my life. And although my parents got divorced, it probably made me more eager to create a relationship that would last because I saw what happened to me and my brother. I became a bit more of a father role to my brother, and I didn't like the way that played out. So, to answer your question, I got very good at business. Like, I made my first million when I was 19 from e-commerce. I then subsequently made a lot more millions from social media marketing, real estate, importation, and other e-commerce businesses. And I had a string of bad relationships. And when I say bad relationships, they were just relationships that didn't work out. And I suddenly realized that actually what I needed to do was stop applying different frameworks and thought processes towards a relationship when my businesses were thriving really well. I was like, well, why do I need? I think it's just, all these American movies. Excuse me, all this romanticism and all of this just love is, this amazing thing and it'll work out. Actually, it doesn't. My parents got divorced, and if that was the case, a lot of these crazy marriages and all these things would be good, but they weren't. So I was like, well, I want to make a relationship work properly, and before I have kids with someone, because I have very, very, very precise goals and a very precise location that I am heading towards with my life. And I knew that if I was going to have, and I wanted to have a woman by my side because I think the most powerful relationship in becoming successful is a man and a wife. There is nothing that will beat that relationship on planet Earth, especially when it's done properly. So I realized that I would need to actually find a woman the same way I'd find, say, the COO of my company. I know it sounds really cold and harsh, but I was like, well, if I become the man deserving of an amazing woman, I can be selective and picky about her traits because there's arguably 4 billion other ones on the planet. Why don't
Of
just
course,
pick
of course.
one that can actually align with me? And to your
Yeah.
point, like you said earlier, communication. So I found my wife, funnily enough, on social media. It was a dating app called Tinder. Now, the reason I laugh is because I actually use this as a bit of a play because I was like, well, if I'm being scientific about it, I can pre-frame people on this app quite quickly and I can do it very efficiently. So I was like, one, you have the looks, and then all of a sudden I can get very down to brass tacks and details very quickly on, okay, what are you doing for a living? What's your relationship like with your parents? Like, where do you live? All the things I was looking for. And then say, right, okay, based on that criteria, yeah, well, let's meet up for a date. So I remember the first date I had with my wife, she was finishing her first degree in biomedical sciences and was starting a second degree in medicine. She's Iranian actually, so comes from a very family orientated background. Good relationship with her father, great relationship with her siblings, home every weekend from university to come and see her parents, super
Wow.
driven with becoming a doctor. And I remember I said to her, I was like, look, I really like you. We've already done the tick boxes. It sounds like on paper we're compatible. I said, look, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to live in this part of the UK. These are my goals. To be totally honest with you, if anything gets in the way with them, because I'm very selfish, especially with my training as well, I'm not interested. She went, look, well, medicine's my number one priority. My family's my second priority. You'd be third. If we're in a mutual understanding of that, we can move forward. I was like, fucking brilliant. Let's go on a second date. And literally was on the first date, the start of our relationship. It was very much, does it work? And that's how we flourished. And like you said, communication was expectations from day one. She also told me from day one that she wasn't going to be a traditional housewife and she was still going to have her own business and push. Look, there's a modern way of playing the game. And I do believe that you can't just pull in full traditional values and methods because we do live in a different society today.
Yep.
And it's okay
Yep.
for women to work, but it's not okay to expect certain things of one another. For example, I can't just expect my wife to be a housewife, but what I can do on day one is say, hey, I really want to have a relationship where I have a stay-at-home wife who's going to look after the kids, and I'd really rather you didn't go to work. Does that sound good for you? And she can say, no, fuck you, that's not great for me. Or that's actually exactly what I want. Cool. Okay.
Right,
The
right.
problem they run into is they don't have that conversation on day one and then wonder why 5 years up the road, when Elliot doesn't want a kid and she wants it, oh, it doesn't suddenly work. And they've already got a mortgage, they're already
Right.
fully
Right,
integrated.
right,
I'm
right,
like,
right, right. Yes.
but
I
back
love
to your point, why are men not having that conversation? That's the question.
it. Well, I think it has to do with just their number one, their upbringing. Number two, I think it has a lot to do with the way that they see our society now and how women, I mean, look, we can go down that road if you want to go, but boy, I mean, it used to be where, you would have to walk up to a woman and approach her and have some type of at least dialogue with her. It has gotten now to the point where it's not even just dating apps. It's just like a systemized way of meeting women. It's they don't my kids tell me, little, girls are just not. When you're out and about, the communication is very little. Women just don't want to talk to anybody. They want to text. They want to communicate via, dating apps, and they want to communicate, Snapchat or whatever, this and that. And I don't know, just the way that uh, it's just a different angle of attack. And I get it. You mentioned, modern day, the way that you have to kind of adapt, and there is a certain sense of modern way. There's nothing wrong with, women working, being successful, empowered women. With that said, from a man's perspective, when a woman is doing the man's job in the sense that, she is the one that's, making the money and working the long hours, and you are staying home and you are taking care of your kids, and the roles get reversed. And the next thing you know, you're like, hey man, like, where does this fit in and into our world? No matter how modern things are, women are women and men are men. There are big differences between the two. But I think, to answer your question, and maybe what you posed out there, I think that men are not coming to the table with women because they're kind of afraid. They're kind of afraid to turning the woman off, or maybe they don't know the questions or how to lay a foundation out, or expectations. So That's a tough answer. And I've talked to a lot of dudes. I mean, a lot of dudes, thousands. That's what I do. And it's, there's always a different answer, but I think confidence in the sense of like believing that, thinking that they don't have that power. Uh, I don't know. To me, that's the main cause, lack of
Well,
confidence.
I liken it a little bit like to getting a wage. Okay. When you're first starting out in business, you will do a lot of work for very little money because you're not aware of your worth at that point. You might be lowly skilled, you might be highly skilled, but you have imposter syndrome such that you don't actually know how valuable you are, and you're still questioning yourself how valuable you are. And I think men, when it comes to women, quite often know or aren't quite sure of whether or not they're deserving of a high caliber woman. And as you said, with that comes a lack of confidence. And I remember my wife is very entrepreneurial as well. And I used to build a lot of websites. And when I was seeing I had a very successful web design company as well. And she went, "Hey, you're not charging enough. You're too good at what you do." And I think what happened is I'd got so stuck in my ways and I wasn't quite aware of just how good I was at it. And she made me realize that you could probably double or triple your price and you'll still get paid because you're very good at what you do. But I was always questioning of my coding ability, and I had those queries with myself. And as a result, I was undercharging myself and taking poor clients on. I probably wasn't applying for the jobs that maybe I should have been going for, that I was actually a caliber high enough to do. And men are the same. I think that there actually is a massive issue with the status and the quality of men because they know they're not deserving of a good woman, and as a result, don't attract any good women, and then lack confidence with trying to find women. And I do liken it back to everything in life. You get what you deserve. And to be totally honest with you, I'm not going to be humble about this. I've always managed to attract women because I've always worked on myself first. It wasn't, "Oh, I'm just going to go out and find a great lady." It was, "I'm going to work on myself so that great ladies want to come to me." That's going to
Yeah,
the gym. That's being entrepreneurial. That's being focused. That's being trustworthy, acting with honor, integrity, and respect.
sure.
I knew that I was worthy of a good lady. And I think the men now, to your point, they're soft. They don't do any self-development work. And as a result, they have this question about whether or not they are worthy of it and are happy to accept something that's second tier. And maybe
Yeah.
vice versa as well with the women. So you've now got very poor level relationships going on.
What do you think is the most important component of making a marriage work?
A joint vision. A joint vision. So as you said earlier, my wife always said she wanted me to lead. That was a conversation from day one. She'd seen the same thing happen with her mother and her father, and she always likes for me to make the decisions. She always likes for me to be accountable, which I'm more than happy to do, even when it comes to little things like going to a restaurant. Because if I pick a shit restaurant and it's a shit meal, I get to blame. She's happy with that because the buck stops with me, and I like it that way. Right? That's cool. And we said that from day one. But we both said that we wanted to build businesses together. We both wanted to raise a family together, and we both wanted to do something philanthropic, build charities, and have a joint mission. We weren't exactly sure at the time what that would look like exactly, but we both had a very common mission and a very common goals that we both could unite on and jump on the journey together. And the reason I think you said was the biggest proponent of a successful relationship is that exactly because if you both jump into the same car, but one wanted to go south, the other wanted to go north, someone's going to get the arse ache pretty quickly when it's not going the direction they want.
Yeah.
So all it was just from day one, us knowing what we wanted from one another. And I think this is the biggest mistake with everybody. Don't get into a relationship until you know who you are as a person and roughly what you want out of your life. Because otherwise, you could be heading in completely the wrong direction. And it's not fair on the person that you've dragged with you on that journey to one day wake up and go, "Actually, you're not right for me." When it's just because you didn't realize who you are and what you wanted. That's not fair. That's not fair on the other person. So figure out who you are first, figure out where you want to go, and then find someone that actually wants to go on that journey with you. Then your relationship will most likely work out.
What do you think, at least in your experience, the most difficult thing when it comes to marriage?
Adapting. I think in line with that as well, yes, you have an idea of where you're going as a couple, but you evolve as people over time as well. I think that's the biggest thing. It's deploying empathy with one another as you change as individuals over time and finding love for that new person, the evolution of that person, supporting on their new journey. And not trying to keep it the way it was when you were both in your early 20s, because you're very different people at the age of 40 and 50. Life has taken its toll, especially if you've had kids. That completely changes everything in a
Yes,
wonderful
I
way,
agree.
but it changes you as people. It changes how you act. It changes your purpose and your drive and potentially what you wanted before. And if you love that person, you find a way around it. And the problem I see with most relationships now is that they have this throwaway culture because there is this social media and there's 4 billion other people at the other end of the phone. I have to try and make this thing work. As soon as I run into a hurdle, pff, next. I don't worry about my marriage. It doesn't mean anything. Well, no, 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 no. It's I fell in love with this person. We're on this journey together. We're going to change as people. How do I find love in that? How do we work together on that? And how do we realign this goal and the mission we're on with potentially changing emotions and people personalities? And I think that's the hardest part is deploying that empathy and understanding one another as you change as people over time. And then also making it work.
Let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. You started at a very young age, and you made your first million at an early age, and then you lost it all, and then you got back on your feet. To me, that's a sign of resiliency, of tenacity, right? That will. Um, why do you feel like nowadays so many, and I mean so many young men specifically, lose sight of that sense of tenacity, right? Of that drive. Um, I bet you, tell me a little bit about how you made that first million, how you got there when you were younger.
I think it has to be driven from pain. I think we're talking about men that have been raised in extremely comfortable environments. I think the UK and the US, for the most part, not everybody, but the vast majority of young men have been raised in a blanket. They're fucking snowflakes. And although I wasn't raised in a particularly bad environment, there was a hunger in me to do something different. And we came from a poor family. No one in my family had ever made anything of themselves. The name didn't mean anything. My surname, which is why I have this W behind me, I've put my name on everything because I want to create legacy from it. And I realized that if I wanted to get out of that position, then I had to be in a mood and in a drive to be able to do that. And change only occurs when the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. And I think people have lost their drive, mate, because life is way too easy for most people nowadays, especially for men. They don't have to go out and fight for their food. They don't have to go to war. They've literally
Yeah.
had their mother like wiping their ass up until they're 21. And I think that's the big issue now. It's like the enemy of a great life is a good life. And this is why you're seeing, like, even in Eastern Europe, for example, Poland is on track to exceed GDP per capita over the UK in the next 4 years. We're taking, and I say this respectfully, the Polish used to come and build our stuff. They were the immigrants in our country, building all of our luxury hotels and houses and everything else.
Crazy.
Now they're the guys that have outworked us because we got soft and they've gone, these
Wow.
motherfuckers, we're going to take them out. And that's just because they had a tough life. And maybe that's part of the cycle. Maybe that's what it is. And I think there's a few of us that, regardless of the life that we have, we're just driven that way. So I think there's a genetic component to it, but I don't want to blame that because there definitely is a situational element to it. And I always say to someone, like, if someone literally did come and put a fucking gun to your head and said, you're going to die in 30 days unless you go and achieve X, Y, Z, you'd go and work. There's no drive, mate, because there's no need to drive.
What sparked you though? Like what did it, what was it inside of you that it pushed you to make that type of money at such a young age?
It was never about the money. It was about proving people wrong. I don't know about you, but do you think some people are just blessed with that drive? Because I can't pinpoint it. I, and it's going to be a really shit answer, and I'm sorry for that because I know people want to reverse engineer someone's that level of drive. I was given that. I've always believed that, and I know you hear a lot of people say this, but I always believed that I was going to make something of my name and do something with my life. And to be totally honest with you, the thing that I track it back to is I'm petrified of death, like absolutely petrified of death. And I've, even as a kid, really appreciated every second that I've had, and I've never wanted to squander it. I see it as a gift. I see it as something that shouldn't be wasted. And I quite often play out the scenario in my head where I've completely allowed myself to just let it slip. And I've not done myself and my family proud. And that's
Mhm.
honestly one of the biggest proponents for me driving the way I drive is I just don't want to fuck this opportunity up.
Yeah.
I wake
Yeah.
up every day, I'm like, thank God I get another go at this again. That's honestly how I feel. I'm like, I just thank you. Like,
Yeah.
no, and I get to, you and I have been blessed to live in an era where, you're across the pond. We're on a Zoom call together. We're building empires. We can build the life that we never want to stop playing.
Yes.
At the very least, if you don't feel that blessed with the time that you've got, why not try and make the most of it? I'm like, what else are you doing? So
Perfect.
we're so lucky, man. We're so blessed. Genuinely.
Let's talk about that right now. So we are blessed. Talk to me about your spirituality. Are you a grateful guy? For me, man, I'm all about, giving grace and thanking God for the things around me. And how do you operate in that domain?
I wake up every single day grateful to be here. I'm just honestly, I pinch myself every day. I pinch myself every day. Like I wake up next to an amazing woman. I have the two boys running in, causing absolute carnage, and I see them growing as young boys, as growing into young men. And you know, I'm not even, I don't class myself as religious, but I have found that the more I've appreciated what I have and I've been more giving, the happier I've become and the more things seem to have moved into position for me. Even the bad times in life, I love because I know that it's going to give me the contrast to the great. I'm just appreciative of being able to experience pain, experience happiness, experience love, hurt, betrayal, everything. I love it
Yeah,
all. And for me, it's just a gift. And like I said, I don't specifically, I think I'm changing as I'm getting older. I find myself saying I'm not religious a lot more and more because things happen to me and happen for me all the time at the moment, and I've never had that. And that's only since I've become more grateful that that has started to happen to me, and
Mm.
it's truly, truly a blessing. That's all I am. High frequency, mate. Frequency is everything. I think it's how you treat people, how you interact with people. The more I've put out in terms of high frequency, the higher frequency people I've got back. It's magnetic. It's insane. And I'm just here for the ride. Love it.
I agree. So talk to me about people who you surround yourself with. How important are they in your life? Outside of your family, the inner circle that you surround yourself with.
Well, I'm famous for saying that I'll never do business with men that cheat on their wives because the character of people around me is the most important thing. And I think you've seen this as well. The bigger your notoriety becomes, the more famous you become, the more successful you become, the more important it is to have people that you can trust with your life. And it doesn't just come. And people, I get these questions all the time, especially young men. This is the problem. It's the expectation of things to land on their plate. And they're like, Elliot, bro, brother, how do I go and get a great network? I'm like, become valuable to that network. Like, if you want to have amazing people in your circle, they're not just going to pull a seat out of the table for you and say, hey, Elliot, there you go, mate. We've been working our absolute nuts off, became great people. These people literally protect us and, we'll take armies on together. Why don't you just come and sit at this table?
Yeah.
We don't know you from Adam. You've never done anything for us, never provide. No, it doesn't work that way. Like, if you want, first thing you need to do is become an insane person yourself. So, young men, young women, and old, because a lot of people haven't done that self work. Focus on you first. Become skilled, become philanthropic, become grateful, become high frequency. Give as much as you possibly can to others, and I promise you the world will start moving in ways for you. And
Yeah.
to your point, if I'm around anyone that is unfaithful, doesn't act with honor, integrity, and respect, I'm going to drop you in an instant. It's so important to me. I'm aggressive with culling my circle, and I only have a few people that I would call close friends. I literally think about my life like onion rings and communication channels. And I have this inner circle where I would die for those people. Genuinely, I know they would die for me too. And not only that, they're also on similar missions to me. I think this is important. Like we said about the relationship you have with your wife, I also think your close circle need to have similar missions so that you're all in alignment and you're all working towards something similar. You're all encouraging one another and holding each other up and pulling each other up when you're down or going through a low period. Because life is full of challenges, it's full of hard times, and it's the people that you've got around you that get you through them. No one's exempt from that. There's not one person, and this is the other thing as well. It's like, oh, life is hard at the moment. Yeah, motherfucker, it's hard for everybody. Like we all go through different stages. But I never feel scared because I know I pick up the phone or, I'm like, hey, I need some help. No worries, I am there. Done. My wife is there, my close circle are there. I'm good. And that's so important to cultivate. And anyone that's not like that in your circle is a cancer. And they need cutting out immediately. How about you? What's your circle like?
Pretty much exactly what you said. The character of the men that are in my inner circle has to be at a very high level. Honorable, loyal, men who have brought value to the table. They just don't, we don't open our inner circle just to, specifically in our round table, men have to have bled and sweat with us, and they have to bring something of value to the table. It's, it's a certain right, right? It's a rite of passage to enter. Uh, Men have no clue nowadays what that means. They feel like they're entitled. Somehow they rub shoulders with X, Y, Z, and the next thing you know, it's kind of like, hey, let me in. And we don't do that. We don't play that game. We also don't give a shit what you've done in the past. I don't care if you are someone that has ran $500 million company or, elite soldier or whatever. You saved 1,000 lives as a fireman, or we don't care about all that. We care about the kind of person that you are today and the value that you are bringing up front. As a matter of fact, we are totally against men who sit around sitting and resting on their laurels and telling us all their stories from 10 or 15 years ago. We want men who are here present now and who are striving to be the best version of themselves, and our inner circle really gravitates to other men that are bringing, like you said, that value to the table. And some of them are missing, they miss that point altogether. They think that they're entitled to it. So we're spot on that. About you, okay? So let's talk a little bit about your background, and to get to a level, especially where your parents were divorced. You're married now for over a decade, have two kids, been an entrepreneur, you've been successful. I mean, where along the line do you feel like was the time that you said, I am reinventing myself now? Maybe that redefining moment.
It was almost definitely about 6 months after my first son was born. I can tell you the day because I remember what happened on that day.
Wow.
My 20s were very much predicated around earning as much money as humanly possible. I was a competitive guy. I was just ruthless, absolutely ruthless when it came to building my businesses and selfish. I was bodybuilding, I was working. I wasn't an arsehole to people. I was just very selfish. I didn't, and I'm being totally honest here, I didn't really care too much about helping others. It was more about helping
Yep.
me. I knew one day maybe I'd help others, but it was that really immature me.
Yep.
And I'm so lucky that my wife still saw through that at the time and stayed with me because I was extremely hell bent on where I was going and what I was doing. And if you weren't on my steam train, I didn't care,
Mhm.
frankly. And I remember we had my first son, Morgan, and I'm not proud of this, but I'll tell you the story because I think it's important. I remember I was sitting there, I was trying to sort some sale out, or there was some sort of business deal going on. I can't remember exactly what it was. And my wife was outside and my son was inside and he was laying down on a cushion. And she was out bringing in some sort of it was a chair or something for Morgan. I think it was quite heavy. And my mother-in-law came running in. She's the fiery woman anyway. She came running in and was like, Elliot, what are you doing? because we were at her house, so she was seeing it. And I said, "What do you mean? What I'm doing? Working?" It was like midday on a Monday or something. I was like, "I'm at work. Leave me alone." She was like, "Your wife is carrying in some heavy chair. Why are you not helping?" And instantly, I was like, "What do you mean? Why am I not helping? I'm making money. I'm being the man of the family." Da, 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 da. And I was like, and she got really riled up, and I got really riled up, and it was some very choice words were exchanged. And in that moment, my wife came in. She'd never seen her mother attack anyone like she was attacking me. It was deep, and she brought a lot of stuff up about who I was as a person, how I acted, and it wasn't coming from a place of just anger. It was coming from a deep place. It had clearly been boiling for a while. And you
Mhm.
know when you're in that, I was seething. I was red. I was rude, and then I picked up my son, got my wife. We got in the car and drove off. And I was on the way home. I was like, "I can't believe your mum said this. We had this massive argument. Da, da, da. She sees what I do for the family. Yada yada yada." And one thing I will always compliment myself for is I do, even though I could be a bit hot-headed from time to time, I definitely got better as I get older, is I'll always sit there and think over anything that's been said to me, even if I haven't liked it, to try and understand where it's come from. And I remember over the preceding 2 or 3 days after that point, I did a lot of deep work and a lot of deep thought about that because I knew it was coming. Her mother loves me and she loves our family, and it wasn't coming from somewhere that was it wasn't being spiteful. It was more deep. It was deeper than that. And I remember sitting there thinking for a long time that my actions had come from the fact, and I figured it back to, I was actually very, very, very scared when my first son was born because this was the first period of my life where I had a responsibility outside of myself, that I could no longer be as selfish as I was. I couldn't go to the gym at 1 p.m. every single day. I couldn't have my 6.5 hours sleep every single night. I couldn't eat my meals on schedule. I couldn't make, life was, this kid was reliant on me and my wife. And my initial reaction to that was, I'm going to go and do what I know best and just completely pull myself away from the situation and go work. And I
Yeah,
justified in my head that that was okay because I'm bringing in the money. Yeah, you're the man, you're bringing in the money.
yeah,
And in those 2 or 3 days after this massive row with my mother-in-law, I suddenly realized that's not a real man. There's plenty of men with money that are arseholes to their wife that are not present for their kids. A real man, yes, he does go and make money, but he's not just a cash machine. My wife didn't marry a cash machine. My son certainly doesn't want me to just turn up and give him money when he needs it. He wants a father that he can look up to and respect, who's present, that he can see helping his mother out when she's struggling out the car with something heavy, and he's also built a life where he can be present and he can be working. And if he can't figure that out right now, that's what he needs to be working towards. And I had this massive shock, and I suddenly thought, whoa, as a real man, as a father, you have to do it all. And that is becoming a better husband, that's becoming a better father, that's earning more money for the family, it's giving security, it's being the rock, the emotional rock when everything else is falling apart. Even if your wife's screaming at you for doing something wrong, you stay there, you don't get emotional. No matter what enemy's at the gate, they feel safe. Now is the pivot in my life where I suddenly realized that it wasn't just about making money, it was about a hell of a lot more than that. As that changed in me, that then became more about how I acted with my customers, how I acted with people around me. And that my business has absolutely flourished at that point. Life suddenly became a lot better because it was working from a place of much less crappy selfish behavior.
you've been rich and you've been poor. Which would you choose?
Rich.
Why?
Because with money becomes opportunity, and with opportunity comes power, and with great power comes great responsibility. And I'll tell you another story, actually. My mother-in-law, I don't get on with, and I don't even mind about saying that on this podcast because we don't see eye to eye. She knows we don't see eye to eye. Fuck her. We
Oh
never got on.
Lord.
We had a row one Christmas about this topic exactly,
Mm.
and she said that I was a capitalist pig or something. She's very left wing. I was some capitalist pig, and all I cared about was, yeah, ironically, I cared a lot about money. And I said to her, I said, "How many people do you employ?" And she said, "None." I said, "How long have you been unemployed for and taking, benefits from the government?" It was a decent period of time. So I said, "I employ X amount of people. I pay a shitload of taxes. I also provide goods and services into the economy that help and solve problems. I'm not stealing, I'm not scamming people, I'm genuinely creating value into the marketplace and doing good, and I love my life. And I said, also with that, my wife and I, we've just opened up our foundation. We're creating free medical centers and we're going to be doing a lot more for charity. That doesn't come for free. And also my ability to look after my family, I can pay for, I'm very blessed to be able to pay for my family's healthcare. I can give them security. I can pay for their school and education. I can help friends out. I can invest. Life is better when you have money, 100%. And I don't think it's an excuse. It's certainly not an excuse not to have money. I think with the opportunities we have today, every man can make money and also do all the other things as well. It's not an exclusive way of life, in my
Without a
opinion.
doubt. Without a doubt. Talk to me a little bit about purpose and mission in life. It's my personal opinion that a purpose-driven man is unstoppable. He is a very hard, difficult enemy, very difficult foe. What are your thoughts on purpose and a man?
It's your why. If you don't have a reason for being, then a man is useless. And I think this is to your point earlier about the weakness of men more recently, is that this whole shift in, trying to destroy masculinity and taking away traditional roles has taken away purpose. And with that comes all of the mental health problems I think you're seeing in a lot of men, because we're built to hunt, we're built to gather, we're built to build empires, we're we're built to compete. State schools in the UK now have taken away sports day because they don't want them getting emotionally upset about the fact that they didn't win. I'm like, where's the purpose in turning up for the day?
Oh,
It's
good.
it's starting at that young age where you've literally taken away purpose. And you see this in women as well. If when you look at a mother who's great mothers specifically who have spent their entire lives making sure that their children are raised correctly, they're maternal. When they flee the nest, watch what happens. For the most part, they lose purpose. They become more unhappy. And that's when the grandkids come around, they find new purpose again. They actually have mission. They get out of bed. They spring out of bed. They suddenly start losing weight again, and everything. Life becomes better. Both men and women need to have purpose. Humans need to have a reason to get out of bed. Otherwise, what on earth are we doing here? So, as you said, a man with a purpose is unstoppable. A man without a purpose is depressed. He's useless. He's weak. He's got nothing to fight for.
Yes, I agree. Talk to me about power. How do we translate power? There's so many people out there that the moment that you say power, they're thinking, dictator, vindictive, bad person, and a power in a man's life, in my opinion, is transcendent. It can be used for such greatness, but many people, they don't see it that way. What are your thoughts on power?
Power can come in multiple ways, and I think it depends on the person and how they want to create that power. But for me, the way I always want, or the way I wanted to build power, and the metric that I use to see whether or not I have become powerful is me, as you said earlier, going hell for leather on a mission, and other men joining me on that mission because they see what I'm doing and they're inspired and influenced by me. And I can lead through my actions, through what I'm doing, without having to push or create fear to get someone to do something. True power comes when people will stand and fight behind you because they want to be there. That's power. That's true power. That's fucking scary. When you have a brotherhood or an army behind you that love you for who you are and what you're doing and love your message, if you're a leader, if you're a company owner, whatever it may be, and you have men behind you that truly want to be there and will truly fight for you because they love you and what you stand for, that's power. I'll take that army over any army that's there through fear.
Yeah, yeah. Leadership, from a man's perspective, Talk to me a little bit about that specific thing because I find that a lot of times leadership is more about people respecting the rank rather than really respecting the individual, the person. I have found that in my 18 and a half years in law enforcement and uh, special operations and police work, and I could probably, in three fingers, say that these men I felt were true leaders, real leaders, and the rest were just, acknowledged by rank.
What were they doing differently to the others?
Well, I think that if you're not authentic and if you're not real, and if you don't lead with a sense of sincerity of heart, I'm sorry, people could see right through you. If it's always about that self-centered nature, if it's always about you, and using power in contradictory manners that we just discussed now, from a dictator's point of view, from a person pointing fingers, micromanaging, people are not going to follow you. Okay. They want an authentic leader who they know has their best interest at heart. And you know what? Who really cares, man? Who really cares? So, sincerity of heart to me is rule number one as far as being a leader. And then, of course, having your team's back, right? Oh, I mean, I can't even go into all that. It's take the blame, buddy, and pass the credit. That's the way leaders should function. So that's my take on leadership. Give me an idea through your life and entrepreneur world, and where do you see leadership in this day and age, and how do you translate it for not just men, but for in relationships and business.
Leadership is an incredible thing, and I think a lot about it because I think that probably in more modern times we call it role models, or lack of, I should say, and how it translates across everything is how you act as a person. I know that keeps coming back to the same, I keep banging on the same drum. When you become someone great, you will inherently become a leader because people will be inspired by you because you've earned and deserved their respect. And you said, actually, everything we've talked about today just kind of ties in here. A man with purpose believes his mission. And as a result, when he's sitting there with a couple of guys and he's like, guys, we're going to that really deep, scary looking cave over there, but I truly believe this is the right way to go. They'll feel your confidence
Mhm.
and the fact that you are going there and you're going there too. You're not just sending them in, right? As
Yeah.
you said. And then also, to your point, which I loved, more than happy to take accountability for the fuck ups and pass the credit. That is a true leader. No matter what happens, it's your fault. But I prefer that actually. I like to believe, and maybe it's my controlling side, but I realize that if everything in my life is my fault, and I am where I am because of the decisions and actions I've taken to get to where I am, and also means I can control my future, which is a very empowering thought. So for me, leadership really comes from acting with intention, showing the way. And I think that I've learned that a lot more from my two young boys because I've then also become very accountable for everything that I do, even swearing. I'm still not the best, but I'm getting better at that.
Yeah.
You become aware of every single thing that you're doing, and
Without a doubt.
would it be good enough for my son to do? And the great thing about that is too, is a great benchmark. And I think this is where being a parent, I'm so blessed, is that I can now ask myself, okay, if I'm doing something, would I be happy with my kids doing the same? And quite often the answer is no. So if it's not good enough for my kids, then why on earth would I be doing that to myself? Like drinking heavily or, whatever it may be. Okay, would I want my kids doing that? No. Well, actually, maybe I shouldn't be doing that because if they see that, they're likely to follow. So leading through giving yourself a set of standards that you never ever falter from will transcend over to every single area of your life. That's leadership to your wife, it's leadership to your business, it's leadership within, if you're part of the police force or part of a team. People will follow and navigate to you. And that's, I don't think leadership's for everybody, but for me, I think it's very important, especially when you're in a role of power and responsibility. And I would much rather that people followed rather than be pushed. Because the other side to that is as well, the minute you show weakness as someone that has garnered followers from being a good person and, like you said, acting with sincerity, they will prop you up. The minute you show weakness with people that you've had to use force and fear to get into where they are, they'll kill you at that point. It's a very different outcome. So I know which camp I'd rather be in.
Yeah, without a doubt. All right, and finally, let's talk a little bit about command presence and your ability to stay in shape physically, mentally. How has that helped you throughout your life?
Well, to stay in shape, you need structure, in my opinion. And a little hack I always had, because I got into bodybuilding very young. I loved it. I think it's just like I liked having things controlled and I like to have a routine. I mean, even to this day, I don't like traveling too much when I don't have like a set routine, waking up here, eating here, training here, working here. It's just the way I am. And I used to organize my days through my meals. So I used to eat anywhere between 6 and 8 meals a day when I was getting big. And I scheduled my work based on which meals I was eating. So I knew between meal 1 and 3, I would be doing, deep work. Between three
Right.
and four, I'd have this meeting. Between 5 and 6, I'd have a gym. And through my 20s, that's how I lived. But that structure brought clarity, it brought focus, it brought great growth to my life because everything was laid out and it worked perfectly. So everything clicked. I felt good. I was in shape. My mind was working quite great. I had great clarity. I was sleeping well. I was eating right. I think, especially when you're a young guy, that's your foundational years. I saw my late teens and through my 20s as really laying the foundation blocks. Yes, I made money early on, but myself as a person wasn't quite where I needed to be as a man. So the whole, and I talk about the green pill life, which is mindset, personal image, health, relationships, and wealth. The 5 pillars of life all need to be in sync, all need to be working together. Because without those 5 pillars, you're going to have a very unstable structure to build off of. And it starts with who you are as a person. Because, like we talked about frequency earlier and how you go out and approach life, it's got to start with how you feel as a person. You asked me, like, are you a grateful person? Are you someone that is positive? Yes, I am, because I work on my mental health through physicality, through making sure that I am as good as I can possibly be. And it's very difficult to think your way out of a bad mindset. Very difficult to think your way out of a bad mindset. So eating well, training hard, moving will all help you actually start to get more positive motion. And people that feel overwhelmed and anxious, I think for the most part, it's because they feel like they've lost control. So for me, if my base is always, I get up at a certain time, I train at a certain time, I eat at a certain time, I sleep at a certain time. At the very least, I have something I've got in control that isn't out of whack and keeps me
Right.
anchored. I think that is so important, especially for men that have, we've got all of our hormones and all these, we've got all these things and pressures of life at us. If we don't have at least something in control, we don't have at least some form of structure, the likelihood is you're gonna blow a gasket at some point.
Awesome, man. I love that. I love that. All right, Elliot. Where can people find you online, on social media and such?
Literally just put my name in. So Elliot Wise, ELLIOT WISE. You find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere. And hopefully I should be coming out to the States very soon as well. So hopefully we'll be seeing a lot of your
When you're
fans and
down here,
followers.
let me know, man. We'll have some lunch and, you
That'd be
know,
amazing.
that'll be
No, I'm gonna
great.
do a big tour. Like I said, I love the American spirit. I love the patriotism for a lot of you guys, and it's something we're missing here. So hopefully we can start bringing a little bit back over here.
Amen, amen to that, man. UK is a good place. I have many friends there. So,
You got another one now.
all right, man. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you again for being on, man. We'll have you on soon enough because I think this conversation could go for a lot longer. Until then, may God bless everybody.